Hello everyone, it's Drake again, and today I'll be sharing some books that I got in this Austin, Texas book haul. And I specifically went to, as you know, my favorite bookstore in Austin, Texas, namely Alienated Majesty, as you can see on the top there. And for their bookmark here, their quote is "Home of the Weird, the Radical, and the Lost." And I do think that covers generally, in broad strokes, what they specialize in. I would add they have an amazing ecology section, like ecology sustainability section. They have exceptionally well-stocked translated contemporary literature sections, both fiction and poetry. And they have amazing political history works, and we'll see some of that today, some of each of one of those categories. So this is basically a plug, an unpaid plug. Please, if you are able, go visit Alienated Majesty. I was chatting about it today, and although I have not visited every single bookstore in the United States, I'm sure if I had, I could easily say that Alienated Majesty might be the best new bookstore in the United States. New independent bookstore that sells new books, I mean by that. They also have a very good Spanish language section in the back corner, so check that out. All right, so we'll just dive right in here. The first book I'm going to show you, two of these books are new, as far as they were published in the last month. And so if you're interested in them, definitely go pick them up from your favorite bookstore. All right, this first one here is a book I've been interested in for years, but it had been out of print. The 10,000 Leaves, Poems from the Manoshu. And as it says on the back, and the reason I was so interested in it, the first and greatest anthology of classical Japanese poetry. The Manoshu is considered, along with the Tale of Genji, to be one of the most important works in classical Japanese literature. And it says here specifically, this volume reproduces the first 5 books of the original Manoshu with an introduction and notes by the translator, Ian Hideo Levy, whose elegant and informative edition received the National Book Award. So, as you can see, this is one of NYRB's poet series, but normally their books are shorter this way and shorter this way. So this one had to be bigger to hold all the poems and to maintain the structure. And it's about 400 pages of poems. So if you're on the same trajectory as I am with expanding your awareness of global classical literary traditions, this is a must-have. This is a must-have. Like it says on the back, it's Tale of Genji and Basho for Japanese literature, for the true greats. So among others inevitably, but if I had to guess, if you're going to pick 3, and that's going to be your stronghold of classical Japanese, this would be in it. I haven't had a chance really to read the translations. I've skimmed a couple, and they're interesting, but I really want to dive into this. Many of the poems were written in the I believe it's the Nara period, Nara into the Heian period, which the dates are like 600 AD to 900 AD, I believe. And then I think it was collected around the year 1000, but don't quote me on it. But anyway, fascinating. So the 10,000 Leaves, highly recommended. New NYRB for us. All right, I have another book here that, again, was just published. Let me see if it says in the front here when. By Verso 2025. First, it was published by Duckworth & Co. in 1981, its first actual printing. But this here, one of these like insane British scholarly names. Geoffrey, the G stands for Geoffrey. Gem de Saint Croix. All right, very good. We get it, Geoffrey. But seriously though, this is a fascinating work. The class struggle in the ancient Greek world. Now, those are two things that don't usually get combined, right? Classical antiquity and a Marxist analysis of history. Now, if you're like me, that sounds fascinating. And let me read one of the quotes on the back here that incidentally is a quote from the New York Review of Books. Widely reviewed and debated, the class struggle in the ancient Greek world was hailed by the New York Review of Books as, quote, the only work in a Western language that has ever attempted to tell the story of the greatest part of the ancient world with the interest of the lower classes as its central theme. Unreal, The works on the Middle Ages that I've been reading appeal to that absolutely, history from down under. Not about Australia, but the other down under, the actual down under, the underclass, the peasants. And so yeah, this book is just absolutely perfect. Also, my buddy, Cyrus, who also goes by Drunzo here on YouTube, he tipped me off to this author for a different book. This author also wrote a book, The Origins of the Peloponnesian War, from 1972, which admittedly I am not nearly as interested in. I did enjoy Thucydides, but the Peloponnesian War is not going to be one of my specialties. Although it is interesting, if I love this, inevitably I'd be curious to see what this author has to say about that as well. But guess who made a comment about this Geoffrey figure, Saint Croix? David Harvey. David Harvey, who I just finished reading, listening to an audiobook, but, very intently, the Brief History of Neoliberalism. On his death, David Harvey wrote in The Guardian, few contributions to ancient history are read much longer than a generation. There are exceptions, such as Edward Gibbon and George Grote. Geoffrey, I suspect, will join that company. And I guess implicitly by printing this book and, to a minute degree, me talking about it and reading it does contribute to that premonition that David Harvey has. So anyway, fascinating stuff here. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have a work of translated contemporary literature. You see what I did there? And we have The Fetishists, the Tuareg Epic by Ibrahim Al-Koni. And this is published by University of Texas Press, the Center for Middle Eastern Studies, as you see on the back there. Unfortunately, this book is out of print. You can find copies online for about double the going rate. So you can find copies online for $60 or so. And this one, again, I got through Alienated Majesty. The book buyer, Stephen, was kind enough to reach out to UT Press, even though it was out of print and he couldn't order one. And long story short, he was able to come through for me, and a representative of UT Press brought the book to the bookstore. And let me just give you a brief description of what this book is. So I believe in Britain it was translated first as The Animists, and then in America they translated it as The Fetishists, which might be getting in the way of it being bought. But here's the description. I will just read the back here because it's fascinating. Well, before I do that, why am I interested in Al-Koni right now? Because I knew about this book 7 years ago when it came out. The bookstore that preceded Alienated Majesty, called Malvern Books, which had an amazing selection as well, had this book. And I knew about it for years, literally 5 to 6 years. And I didn't buy it that whole time. It was partially out of my price range. It was $35 at the time. And at that time, I didn't have, money to throw around. But as you know, I recently started learning Arabic and have been making some decent progress. And Adonis is one of my favorite contemporary authors. Well, he's still alive. He's fairly old, but nonetheless. He's maybe the best living poet, on earth, And I saw a talk with Adonis and Ibrahim Alkoni. I can't remember the moderator, but he was Dutch. I believe he's Dutch or Danish. I'm feeling more Danish. I think he's Danish. But anyway, you can find it on YouTube, and really it's a fascinating video. Adonis was talking about Sufism in relation to contemporary Middle Eastern political issues and cultural issues and things. And then Ibrahim Alkoni was talking about like the place of the artist in the Middle East right now. And neither of them, I think, live in the Middle East. Let's see. Adonis lives in Paris, but visits Lebanon, to my understanding. And I think Ibrahim Alkoni lives in Switzerland? I think he lives in Switzerland. Maybe teaches there, I can't remember, but I think that's correct. But he is a Saharan writer, as it says, born in the Fezzan region. I believe he's from Libya. He was from Libya originally. That's what it's called. All right, here we go. Let's get into the description. The Fetishist, originally published in Arabic as Al-Majus, is considered the masterpiece of Ibrahim Alkoni, one of the most prolific and important writers in Arabic today. In The Fetishists, Alkoni explores what happens when a writer asks the novel to speak of and for the Saharan desert, when rival cultures clash, and when communities seek to build a utopia on earth, as individuals struggle between a desire for material well-being, represented by gold dust, and a need for spiritual meaning. As the story opens, Sultan Orag of Timbuktu, who had already lost most of his power to fetishist Bambara, leaders of the forest lands, fears he will lose his only daughter, Tenere, as a human sacrifice to their god, Amne. The Sultan sends Tenere to seek refuge with fellow Tuareg nomads in the plain, but even in their traditional nomadic community, a competition rages between jihadi militant Islam, moderate customary Tuareg Islam, the cult of gold dust, and traditional African folk religions. In this epic novel of the Saharan desert, Alkoni blends Tuareg folklore and history with intense, fond descriptions of daily life in the desert, creating a mirror for life everywhere. Through its tragic rendering of a clash between the Tuareg and traditional African civilizations, the novel profoundly probes the contradictions of the human soul as it takes the reader on a unique spiritual adventure inside the Tuareg world. And this is translated by William Maynard Hutchins, professor at Appalachian State University. If this book doesn't sound fascinating, unsubscribe. How about that? But yeah, unreal. It was a mistake. I should have allocated more money back in the day to get a hold of it, but I'm just extremely grateful that I was able to get a hold of this. Ibrahim Alkoni, The Fetishists. Apparently, it will not be reprinted, at least in the short to medium term. So if this sounds interesting and you have the money, I would probably get a hold of a copy. Yeah, that's all. That's my Austin, Texas book haul from the venerable Alienated Majesty Books, just north of UT's campus, just north northwest of UT's campus. Maybe a 10-minute walk from UT. I would say this bookstore is worth traveling for. If you're in Houston, if you're in Dallas, if you're in San Antonio, it's worth the drive. It's worth the day trip. If you're in Brownsville or El Paso or Amarillo, that's a trip. But you can make a day out of Austin. You can come here, get your books from Alienated Majesty, swing by Yaya Cafe, Jew Boy Burgers, Kome, the amazing sushi place. They're all within a 5-minute radius, just north of UT's campus. So highly recommended. So all right, that's the end of that video. Alienated Majesty. This video was not sponsored. Death is a gang boss.